Hello and welcome to this latest episode of Dil Se with Kapil Sibal. I'm Nidhi Razdan. Today we're going to talk about the election campaign that's currently taking place for 5 states, which is going to set the tone for the Lok Sabha elections next year. And one of the themes that we are seeing consistently as far as the BJP is concerned has been religion, no surprise there, as well as the issue of freebies. That is a bit of a surprise because the Prime Minister, Kapil Sibal, has spent most of the last year attacking the opposition on the issue of freebies and announcing in their manifesto now a host of freebies or welfare schemes, whatever you want to call them, for people. But before I get to that, on the issue of religion in politics and religion being used in the campaign, it's not the first time. We heard Home Minister Amit Shah now more than once say during the course of this campaign that the BJP will offer a free darshan at the Ram temple if they're voted to power. Now, they also have the Ram temple inauguration in January. The Prime Minister is going to be there. Do you think that that's really going to set the tone for the Lok Sabha election?
I think the policy of the BJP throughout, I think since 2014, has been exactly this. I mean, we call ourselves a secular nation. What does secularism mean? It means that religion has no place in politics. That's what secularism means. Religion has no place in politics. Essentially, religion ought to be, I mean, it's not so in India, it ought to be a private affair. Now, when you give religion a public space of that nature and use politics to propagate it, then what you're doing is you are actually going against the very grain of what this country stands for. I mean, we are all Hindus. I don't propagate, I mean, I can propagate Hinduism as a religion, but I can't go and say in a speech that if you vote me to power, then you will get a free darshan of Ram Lalla. What does that mean? What's the intent of that? What's the thought behind it? That we as a political party will give you a free darshan of Ram Lalla. They can have a darshan of Ram Lalla anytime. But why connect it to the politics and the outcome of an election?
But before I come to the legalities, the morality of all of that, politically, how do you see that playing out ahead of the general election?
It's going to play out. Right from 2014, I said to you already, this has been the theme of the BJP on the basis of which they want to divide.
Does this give them an advantage, the optics of the Prime Minister, inaugurating the Ram Mandir, which has been such a big issue for them?
Of course. But of course, it becomes somewhat stale, but certainly it will give them an advantage, without any doubt.
But the thing is, it's not just the BJP that's been using religion in politics. Increasingly, if you look at other political parties as well, they're doing the same. I mean, maybe they're not asking for votes in the name of religion, but you have, for example, Rahul and Priyanka Gandhi, their temple visits are now very public. Arvind Kejriwal does havans, which are telecast live on TV. So this is all Hindutva light in a way that's playing out. Kamal Nath is doing it in Madhya Pradesh.
Yes, of course, they all do it. And why is it they do it with Hinduism alone? Nobody else is doing it with other religions. They know because the majority of this country are Hindus, 80%. So they want to garner as much of the Hindu vote as possible. So it has become an integral part of political campaigning now. And quite frankly, this is against the grain of the Representation of People's Act.
Exactly what I was going to come to. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, it's against the grain because you cannot use a religious symbol in the course of an election campaign. I mean, Ram Lalla, Ram Mandir are religious symbols that are associated with Hinduism.
Actually, the act actually says that appealing for votes in the name of religion, caste, community or language is a corrupt practice.
Yes,
that's
right.
what the Representation of People's Act says.
Yeah.
And of course, that's happening with impunity. What does that then say about the courts? And the Election Commission, because this happens right under their noses and everyone looks the other way.
Nothing about it. And the Election Commission, the less said, the better. I think we should just ignore it because they are not concerned with free and fair elections at all. That's my personal opinion. I'm sure some people will not agree with it. But that's my personal opinion. The less said about the Election Commission, the better.
I can see another show developing on that separately. No, but is it not a worrying trend when everyone in some surreptitious way or another is trying to do their messaging through the use of religion?
That's because the court has not come down heavily. Because see, Remember, you had Justice Verma's judgment on what does Hindutva mean,
A way of life.
right? And he said it's a way of life. But he said when you're actually addressing or analyzing a speech given by an individual, you must actually try and figure out what's the intent of the speech, right? And then you can decide whether it's a corrupt practice or not. So while Hindutva, according to him, is a way of life, Hindutva, according to the BJP, has nothing to do with the way of life. It is a way of garnering votes, because they don't see their concept of Hindutva is a very aggressive concept. In other words, you must say Jai Shri Ram. There's nothing to do with Hinduism. Hinduism as a religion doesn't believe in that. If you don't say Jai Shri Ram, then what's going to happen?
But when the opposition tries to play catch up with the BJP on this, through Hindutva light as it were, do you think that will work? Why would people who are, if they're voting because of their religious beliefs, why would they vote for Team B and not Team A?
It's not a question of Team A or Team B. Everybody wants to join the bandwagon. It's as simple as that. Now the question is, it's only if the courts were to actually render a judgment, and in a particular, for example, if this statement is made in the course of a campaign, namely that we will give you free entry
To the Ram temple, which is what happened, yeah.
Right? If the court were to come down and say this is violative of Section 123(3) of the Representation of People's Act, and elections can be set aside on that ground, it will not happen again.
Interestingly, the Supreme Court was hearing a case on hate speeches earlier this year, and the bench said that the moment politics and religion are separated and politicians stop using religion in politics, hate speeches will go away. This was the Supreme Court's own words.
Correct, but nobody
does anything about it.
Nobody does anything about it. Not only that, these hate speeches are continuing, and we keep on filing applications. And the court keeps on saying that this will not do, but nothing happens on the ground because there are no cases that are filed. If there an FIR is filed, it's not investigated. Where these and the hate speeches are much worse, much worse than what you can imagine that anybody can say publicly. In fact, they go to the extent of propagating violence.
No, they do, of course.
And nobody is taking any notice of it.
Yeah, they keep doing their Mahapanchayats. But when you look at the BJP's success over the last 10 years electorally, and Mr. Modi's re-election in 2019, would it be fair to say it's not just the use of religion in politics that is leading to his success, that it's also that combined with welfare schemes, the way they've consciously targeted OBC votes, etc., reached out to those communities. It's a combination of these things.
Certainly a combination.
Yeah.
Religion is just one aspect of it. But certainly it's a greatly emotive feeling for a person of the majority community that is a political party which associates politics with our religion.
So the BJP's argument to this is that the Congress for decades practiced appeasement politics vis-a-vis the minorities.
What is appeasement?
That it bent over backwards to please minority communities, like Muslims.
If you bend over backwards to please the majority, that's not appeasement.
But that's their logic.
I don't know. I mean, what does appeasement mean? Appeasement ultimately is reaching out to those who we believe are underprivileged. So if you do something for SCs and STs, it's not appeasement.
But when you do it for Muslims, it is.
If you do something for other backward classes, it's not appeasement. If you do it for a minority community and a particular minority community, it becomes appeasement. So I don't understand what appeasement is.
Because they have used that to frame this narrative of, Hindu khatre mein hai. That whole narrative that Hindus are constantly in danger.
But that's nothing to do with appeasement. That's something to
that's
do
how they frame
with
it.
The religion. No, that's something to do with the religion. That look, they will ultimately become majority. We're 80% today, but we may become 40% tomorrow. That's nothing to do with appeasement. Appeasement is giving something for the underprivileged, for the marginalized, which includes minorities. And if you do something for minorities, it becomes appeasement. If you do something for SC/STs, it's not appeasement. If you do something for women, it's not appeasement. If you do something for other backward classes, it's not appeasement.
It's only for minorities.
Only that particular religion. If you do something for them, it becomes appeasement. Now, I have never understood this.
It's interesting though that the Hindutva card doesn't always work for them either. It
No.
depends on which part of the country. It doesn't work in the same way like in the south or in Bengal it hasn't worked
No,
for
it
them.
will not work. It will not work in the south. It hasn't worked in the south because the nature of the polity in the south is far more eclectic. You know, and of course, there's the other historical aspect. Now, take for example my own family. You know, I haven't seen my maternal grandparents because they were killed during partition. Right? A lot of Hindu families have lost dear ones. Now, you can carry forward that with a sense of hatred, or you can say, look, this is an event in history that happened in which nobody had any control. So nobody people from both sides were killed, right? Now, it is how you take this forward. And it's I think, the responsibility of politicians not to rub at, not to ignite that sense of hatred and sense of loss and convert it into votes. I think it's the responsibility of politicians.
But
if they don't do it, I think it's entirely irresponsible.
And then does it become a race to the bottom when you have this sort of competitive Hindutva? For example, Kamal Nath actually indirectly called India a Hindu Rashtra when he was trying to justify a Hindu so-called Godman's comments on a Hindu Rashtra. So, imagine that coming from a Congress leader.
But that's exactly joining the bandwagon. You don't want to lose out on the impact that this kind of emotive appeal has on people. And it does have, especially in the northern part of India, it does have. And therefore, but I think as far as the 2024 election is concerned, that's something that's been done and dusted. I don't think it'll have any real impact on the voter in 2024.
So let's talk about then the other issue, which has dominated this campaign, which has been the issue of freebies versus welfare schemes. I'm just looking at the Telangana manifesto of the BJP, where they've announced, for example, free crop insurance to farmers, gas cylinders free of cost to Ujjwala beneficiaries, laptops to girl students, all free. And of course the Ram Mandir and Kashi Yatra, darshan for senior citizens, amongst other things. Now, this is ironic because the Prime Minister has led this campaign against what he has called freebies. The BJP justifies these announcements saying that these are to empower people as opposed to freebies. I don't know what the difference is at this point, but what do you think of this turnaround, this U-turn?
I want to make forget the U-turn. I want to make a fundamental point on this. The fundamental point is this: that if you are offering freebies to the poorest of the poor, you say 500 rupees for a cylinder. Education in Madhya Pradesh, that's part of the freebie offered by the BJP, till class 12 will be free. For the Ladli scheme, they say if a girl child is born, she'll get 2 lakhs at the end when she's become 21 years of age. Now, the budget of the state is 3.15 lakh crores. The debt of the state as of today is 3.40 crores, as I speak today. Now, this only shows that of the 10 years that you ruled India, you were not able to deal with people's issues. You couldn't get rid of poverty. In the hunger index, you have slid 4 spots. You're now 110 or a 126 or so, right? So this is freebies is the recognition that you have failed.
Well, the Prime Minister announced that they're going to extend the free food grain scheme by the centre by another 5 years for 80 crore people.
Which means people are hungry, no? Otherwise, why would you give it free?
It was announced during COVID.
Poor people are hungry, which means for the 10 years that you ruled, you couldn't get rid of hunger. Therefore, giving a freebie is acceptance of your failure.
But is part of the problem with this debate the way we frame the language? Because on politics aside, we are a country that does have a large population that is still poor, that still needs help.
Yes.
So, do we call them freebies, or do we frame it as welfare?
I don't call it freebie at all. I call it a complete, as I said, it's a complete failure of our polity. I'm not just talking about BJP years.
You're talking about from the beginning.
Yeah, I don't want to be sort of, targeting one political party. The fact of the matter is we've not been able to get rid of poverty over these years at all. We have reduced it, but we haven't been able to get rid of it. And the result is that poor people are still poor. The rich people are getting richer. Our policies are not consistent with the egalitarian culture of our constitution, right? We say that Anganwadi workers used to get 10,000, we'll give them 13,000. Married women will give them 20. Ladli scheme will give some 24,000 or whatever. Now, what does it tell you? It tells you are accepting the fact that with the kind of economy that we are in and the state of affairs, these people can't make life possible in the absence of freebies. These are not freebies.
And all governments are responsible for that.
Yes, and I agree. Now, you don't have health insurance in this country. If you don't have health insurance, what happens? A poor person, where does he go? He'll ultimately have to pay a private doctor. Right? So what you say is, okay, I'll give you a freebie of 10,000 rupees, 20,000 rupees to get rid of that, to cover over that situation. You don't have free education in this country. Till class 8, we brought it in. We don't have, so now you say, okay, we'll give a girl child free education from KG to PPG. What are you admitting? You are admitting that these families don't have money.
Where do you decide, politically or otherwise, that, X is a welfare measure that is required to be taken and Y is not? I mean, where do you draw the line? For example, free education is one thing. There was a big debate about whether girls should have got cycles in Bihar or whether students should be given free laptops. That this is over and above, that this amounts to a freebie, it's not a welfare measure. But actually, cycles for girls brought more girls into school.
Absolutely.
Right? Laptops for kids will give them better access to better education.
Yes.
So how do we decide?
In fact, I don't distinguish it. I think whatever the state does for the less privileged, for the marginalized, can never be criticized. I think it's the duty of the state. Ultimately, we're a welfare state, but we never converted our economy into a welfare economy. The result is that our policies are pro-rich, and the freebies are meant to say that, look, okay, we are trying to take care of the poor, and that's how we win votes during elections.
But where do we go from here? In the sense that, the Congress has announced a number of freebies as well, whether it is in Rajasthan,
every political party,
everyone, Karnataka, free power, old pension scheme, free gas cylinders for the poor, etc. But where does the competitive populism lead us, especially economically?
It will destroy our economy ultimately, unless we take care of our fiscal situation. You take, for example, the power sector. I'll give you an example of the power sector. Now they say, okay, we'll give electricity free to a certain section of the community, but somebody has to pay for it. Because the generator, the entity that generates power, whether it's NTPC or anybody, actually there's a cost to that, right? That cost has to be paid by somebody. Now, if you give it free to a certain section, then what happens is that you have to recover it from somebody else. Right? If you seek recovering it from somebody else, the politician will say, don't increase the rate to such and such because we lose votes. So what happens is that the distribution companies, the generating companies and the distribution companies suffer losses. And all of the distribution companies in this country are in the red today. Now what do? Then you say, okay, we'll waive the money that is to be paid. It's an absolute mess.
So then how do we reconcile the two? On one hand, you say that you do need welfare schemes.
Empower the poor,
right.
Invest in education, invest in health, invest in, skilling people. This government has done nothing in the last 10 years for that. You are giving tax concessions to the rich, right? 25% tax, 15% tax if it's a new unit in a SEZ. What has the corporate sector done for you?
There was another debate over this, which was, the Supreme Court, which was hearing, petitions on freebies, and the Election Commission, your other favorite institution, initially said it shouldn't wade into this issue at all. It's for voters to decide, and then of course did a U-turn and said,
always do it.
As
now
they do,
the Election Commission.
Yeah. But is this something the courts should be legislating on? Because is this not something voters need to decide on? Whether to,
The problem is that at that time, the government was being represented and Kejriwal was offering a lot of freebies in Delhi.
No, he started the sort of politics of freebies, right?
Exactly.
So everyone's kind of catching on.
They were anti-Kejriwal's success in this context, and therefore they went to court and said that this freebie culture must stop, not realizing that they are themselves knee-deep, neck-deep into it themselves. And the kind of promises they have made to the public, the BJP, both in Telangana, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, in particular shows that they really don't care about freebies. It is only a political thing that they were trying
And so
to
the
do.
final question then is that as we enter this last 6 months before the Lok Sabha campaign, the issue of a caste census, for example, which the opposition has latched on to, has given the opposition, an issue with which that would resonate with a lot of people. And one
Only in
theory,
some states, only in some
well, still, but there is a theory that the Prime Minister may spring more surprises on the freebie front in the months leading up to the election.
100%, yes.
You expect that?
100%. He'll do many things that will be surprises for all of us. He's always surprised us with a lot of things.
Well, on that note, Kapil Sibal, thank you very much. Let's see when we meet you next what the election results tell us, because that is when we will analyze what the State Assembly election poll results mean, not just for those states, but of course for the country as well. See you next time.
Thank you.